Welcome back to part 4 of Oddly Specific Interior Design Yums. Parts 1, 2, and 3 will be linked below, and as a reminder, this series was based off of the phrase, "Don't yuck my yum," which I am co-opting and bringing into the world of interior design. If you're new here, my name is Medora, I use they them pronouns, and I make videos about home design for girls, gays, and theys. Let me know how you feel about my glasses. They're just my blue light glasses, but I'm kind of obsessed with them. I wore them in my last video, which only got like 200 something views instead of the normal 2,000, so please go watch that. But anyways, onto the video. I don't know if I'll be able to find any good pictures of this first one, but I really love using a filing cabinet as a nightstand or a dresser or just as general storage because I have very strong feelings about using drawers as storage. I think they are by far the superior form of storage in about 98% of cases, and I will die on that hill. Drawers are just such an efficient use of space, and they make the objects inside so much more easily accessible than like a cabinet with a door or a closet that you just shove random boxes into. If I'm going to influence landlords and homeowners to do one thing, it's going to be to install more built-in drawers, especially in the kitchen, but also especially in bedrooms. As much as I love a standalone dresser, they're just so big and clunky to move, and they're so expensive if you buy one brand new. So if you own your own home and you're looking to renovate, I would definitely recommend doing built-ins with drawers. It's definitely a little bit more investment up front, but the payoff will be so worth it for generations to come. Number 2 is using unexpected materials. This definitely has the potential to be a little bit more expensive and less practical, so it definitely can be read as a signifier for being a little bit more upper class than you actually are, whether you're trying to do that or not, but mostly it just makes for a really great tactile experience. It doesn't always have to be expensive, you really just need to get creative here, but more than anything, I really just love it as an exercise to like get my brain out of a rut when I'm kind of feeling stuck about a room. And the way that I go about this is that I take a particular object or part of a home, so for example, dishes, and then before I even think too much, I just kind of instinctually know what the most common material for that is. So for dishes, it's ceramic. And then I'll use that to be like, okay, what are all of my other options besides ceramic? Some really neat alternatives might be metal or wood or even like a fun vintage kitschy plastic. It all just depends on what vibe you're going for and what you're trying to do with your space. Another weird one that I included in a video somewhere is leather bed sheets. Obviously, that's a very extreme example, but I want to encourage you to get creative with the materials that you already have access to. Because yes, maybe this person did have these commissioned custom for them and paid a premium for it, but also maybe this person just had a friend who worked for an upholstery business and one of their suppliers was going out of business, so they had some dead stock and so they were able to sell this to the person at cost. You never know. So my point with this whole tangent is make connections, get involved with the community, and get creative with what you already have access to. Number 3 is placing 2 identical sconces or candle holders right next to each other. There's just something about this that is so unexpected and weird, but also pleasant and satisfying. And I will say, I don't think it makes sense if you have a very symmetrical space where it would make sense to put symmetrical sconces, but if you've already got some asymmetry going on, I would say just lean into that and embrace the weirdness. I did this with one of my virtual makeovers that I will link below. This one is kind of similar to number 2, but it feels like its own distinct thing, so here it is. Number 4 is something that is so entirely impractical, but it brings you so much joy that it is undoubtedly worth it. This is one of those things that feels like such a silly little human thing to do, and it really just brings so much life into your home. This is another thing that's going to be really hard for me to find pictures of, but I am thinking off the top of my head of, I've seen giant hand and foot bean bags, which are just so strange. But I will say it is really important to think ahead of time how much the impracticality is worth it. Because is this thing going to get in your way of like moving through your space? Or are having countertops that stain really easily actually worth it? I would definitely try to save this one for things that are more like art or sculptures or interesting weird things like that, where it can have its own space and it's not going to get in the way too much. Because especially if you have a neurodivergent brain like me, even just the tiniest bit of impracticality can kind of ruin your whole day. So go into this one intentionally and carefully, but also joyfully. Number 5 is a short one, and that is finally washing the decorative pillowcases that you haven't washed in 5 or 10 years. I'm definitely not calling myself out on this one. I don't know what you're talking about. Number 6 is weird artsy room dividers. Obviously it's helpful if you have a big enough room that you can actually divide up, but I've actually seen them placed even just like behind a couch, in between the couch and the wall, to provide some dimension and visual interest and stuff like that. If you are actually using it as a room divider, obviously it'll actually help with spatial definition too, in addition to the dimension and the visual interest. This might be another thing that's, again, hard to find photos of, but I do really specifically love this example that Noah Daniel did, where he did a virtual room makeover and added a room divider between the living room and the dining room. Someday I really want to make a room divider out of full 4x8 foot sheets of plywood and do something fun and weird with it, kind of like this green one with the faces, but obviously I would need a much bigger space for that. I didn't script this in, but I am also interested in room dividers that aren't just like a wood or metal folding thing. And the idea that's coming to me right now is one of those flat Japanese curtains, just like hanging from a couple hooks in the ceiling. I think that could be so effective and so beautiful, and it wouldn't take up any floor space, and I'm very curious to see what that would look like. And if any of you try that, please let me know and send me a picture on Instagram. Shameless plug. Number 7 is white candles and lampshades that aren't actually white or ivory or cream, but instead are a much deeper, moodier color like parchment or beeswax. If you've been here for any amount of time, you already know that I love real, tangible things, and also things that are a little bit more historically inspired. And I feel like both of these like colors and textures really kind of play into that, and give a sense that something is much more like handmade and human and rooted in history. Number 8 is a weird one that I haven't heard anyone talk about before, but that's having significantly more coat hooks than coats. Because when I look at pictures of entryways, I tend to really like the ones that have a bunch of empty hooks. And I'm not saying don't use the hooks, but what I am saying is that if all the hooks are being used, it just feels cramped and cluttered to me. Whereas if you have a bunch of open hooks, it feels much more light and spacious and airy. It doesn't feel like you're being bogged down. It feels like you could invite company over at any moment. It just feels better, at least for me. So let me know if you agree. I've definitely mentioned this one in a few other videos. So number 9 is a matte white light fixture that blends into your white walls or the white ceiling. Obviously, this is assuming that your walls and your ceiling are white, but it really also applies to any color. White is kind of just the most common. I've learned recently that there's actually these plaster sconces that are designed specifically to be painted the same color as your wall color, and I just think that is so neat. So yeah, whether you have white walls and ceilings or a different color, having a light fixture that's the same color and blends into the walls or ceiling is just like such a subtle thing to kind of trick your mind into thinking that there's more architectural interest in your home than there actually is. Last but not least is number 10, which is all about tiles. Instead of just picking one single tile and covering an entire area with it, I really love using smaller tiles in interesting ways to create patterns and borders and unique details. And on the flip side of this, I absolutely cannot stand it when someone does a brick pattern with square tiles, or when you use a brick pattern with subway tiles and call it a subway pattern. They're two different things. Just because you're using subway tiles doesn't mean that you're doing a subway pattern. Those are two different things. But that's just me being nitpicky. So for example, this is a gorgeous green bathroom, but I would like it so much better if they just did like a normal horizontal or vertical stack. I'm also just noticing down here at the bottom that the bottom 2 rows of tiles are a perfect horizontal stack, and also the top 2 rows, and so I think they were trying to create some kind of border, but it really is not working. That's so strange. Well, I'm glad I picked this picture to illustrate this, because I think that this really just kind of proves my point that you really have to be intentional with it, because when I first saw that, it kind of looked like a mistake. And it's not. If you wanted to do a border with these exact same tiles, I would say just turn the tile 90 degrees and do a vertical stack going that way. That would make a much more interesting, much more intentional border than making it look like one of the rows is just weirdly off. I think this one is a really fun way to incorporate some little pops of color in a way that still feels pretty classic and traditional, so it feels very in line with the style of the home, but there's still something a little bit fun and modern about it. This one is just absolute chaos and I love it. I don't know what to say other than that. It's so strange, and it's not the kind of thing that everyone would love, but I am so here for it. A more classic example, I think this is a really successful example of how to do borders in a way that feels intentional. And you have so many borders here, right? You've got this top little capped piece that's a different tile piece than the rest of the tiles. You've got this tiny little black stripe. You've got another black stripe down here. And then you've got this giant black border all the way around the bottom, which I just love so much. Again, another very strange example that's kind of out there that not everyone would love, but it's nothing particularly fancy. It's just using square tiles. And I feel like if you have a small space, You really might be able to like do something like this by finding tiles from Habitat for Humanity or on Craigslist or something, because we're not promoting Marketplace anymore because fuck meta. Anyways, so that's it for part 4 of oddly specific interior design yums. I've got plenty more of these scheduled, so make sure to subscribe and turn on the bell if you want to get notified about those. And if you've watched all the way to the end, let me know down in the comments how you're doing. Like, especially within the context of the inauguration and all of the executive orders and everything. How are you doing? Because I, for one, could be doing better, but also could be doing worse. And I just want to take a quick second to remind everyone that executive orders are not laws. Those are not the same thing. They can be challenged in court. And especially if you're a member of one of these politically targeted groups, protect your peace and know that there is no wrong way to live.
What is that?
Or rather, I can think of a few wrong ways, but there's no right way to live. See you in the next video.